which is huge. We get that code name. We get that we get all of it, and that's what's awesome is that there's so much planted here, so many seeds that are planted here that I think Marvel has a great launching point. If they decide to at some point explain that Wanda's a mutant, they can now with setting that up. That out of all the probabilities, which in the comics she uses probability magic as well, is that her and her brother, that bomb didn't explode. So, setting those seeds there. But as we're making our way through the story, we get more kind of the background of what happened in Age of Ultron when she was exposed to the Mind Stone. And the way that Agatha explained it is that gave her powers a boost. That scene, I mean, we kind of already could have made that guess. I don't really think that scene was necessarily needed. It was great. It was cool to see, a great visual to see, like, her interact with the Mind Stone and everything there. But Pietro wasn't there. We didn't get Aaron Taylor Johnson there. And, like, at least the way that it was explained there is that they were exposed together. But, that's neither here nor there. That's just the nerd side of me. But where things really start getting into a really interesting conversation place is when we get the scene of her going to Sword, seeing Vision's body. The director there, shout out to like John Campy and some other people who have said that, everything that he said up into in that episode where he explained like things going on with Wanda, how she started with a militant group, she fought the Avengers at first, all true, except the part now that we know that it was not true when he said that she stole Vision's body. She left without Vision's body. And when you think about this, if you lost your loved one and you go in and you know that they did not want to be made a weapon, you see this group tearing him apart, and his body being done like that, it really adds to the stress and how she feels, and everything going on there. So this episode does a great job at nailing home the grief that Wanda felt overall, and explains that sitcoms have always kind of been her safe place, right? So when she's overtaken with that grief, lets out all that power, and the hex is created, it now makes more sense not only why it was created, but what it became as well. We got to see Vision, the Vision that's in the hex, form, and it looked like it formed out of the Mind Stone energy that was in her, because if you look at the glow that came from it, it was that same orangish, yellowish glow that comes from the Mind Stone. And so, and we're gonna get into some stuff with that. I have some stuff that I want to talk about. I'm trying to bury the lead. I don't want to really talk about what we got in the end credit scene or mid credit scene just quite yet. I want to focus on what's happening with Wanda and Agatha here. And so Agatha is trying to figure out the source of her power. We see her explain, necromancy, and the fact that, she brought the fake Pietro, and she even calls him fake Pietro now too, and why she brought him, because his body was on another continent. She couldn't use it to bring back, but she explains a lot of what's going on. When we see her say to Wanda, you're in a room with runes, and the witch who puts the runes there is the only one who can have the power. And so she starts picking up on the fact that Wanda isn't trained. Wanda doesn't know necessarily that she's using magic in the way that she does. Wanda has no knowledge on the witch power that she's using. And so we start seeing more of what Agatha is trying to, like, what may be her end game. We saw her absorb, it looked like at least, she was absorbing not only the magic, but the life force of the witches that put her on the stake, and one was her mother as well, which is weird. But so we see that. Is she trying to feed off Wanda? That goes back to the commercial, the Yo Magic commercial that we got back in episode 6, I believe it was, that was just really creepy. So, and I said that before in the last live stream that I did, that Yo Magic commercial now at this point basically has told us everything that we need to know with the show, or at least maybe Agatha's motivations there. When we see that shark saying, I like to feed on Yo Magic, he likes to feed on Yo Magic, but the kid was not able to get the lid off, and then thus ended up dying. So is that the whole way that kid's body kind of decomposed is a lot what we saw with the witches here as well. Apologize, alarm going off. So to jump back, like, what is Agatha's end goal? Is it to feed off of? Is it to get rid of Wanda because she thinks Wanda's dangerous? We really don't know. In the comics, Agatha has been on the side of Wanda. She's been against Wanda. She's been a good guy, a bad guy. She's been all over the place. So they can go a lot of different directions with her. It seems like they're going to make her overtly evil, but they could throw a curveball as well. A lot of curveballs have been thrown in this show. No Monica this episode, no Quicksilver or fake Pietro this episode as well. This was really an episode just about Wanda and getting us in the head of Wanda and seeing what Agatha's reactions to what happened. So we know that Agatha is going through the different seasons of Wanda's life for different stages. We get to see a lot. And one of the best scenes, or my favorite scenes that we got to see in this, was seeing Vision and Wanda interact at the Avengers compound. She's sitting in her room. She senses Vision. Vision phases through. And, you know, and for the people who say, like, I've always been one, the Vision that's in the Hex acts different than the Vision that we got in the movies, ever so slightly, right? And so are we seeing just, we see that moment, and in that moment, Vision is being his normal inquisitive self, his introspective self, and not really, you know, trying to gain, or he is trying to gain an understanding of humans, basically. But we get more of a humorous side of Vision than what we ever got in the movies before this show came out. And so maybe that's what's painted the way that Vision acts in this show. But it's so many layers to this, really. And you know, it is one, like, we get to see all the shows, the I Love Lucy, the Dick Van Dyke Show, everything that she watched, and how that directly reflected in some of the episodes that we've seen so far. But and this episode wasn't as long. You know, it keeps being a lot of speculation is that, you know, the episodes are going to be hour long. I really, really do think the finale is probably going to be an hour and a half, 2 hours. I really do. Like, when you look at everything that they need to tell, and the fact that we're probably going to we haven't really gotten very much action in the show. When you look at this show becoming the #1 show, and a big part of that being because of how great the story that they're telling, how interesting this is. You know, that is a lot said to the quality of what Marvel is creating here, is that without it being an MCU based show, but without it being a lot of fights, without it being a lot of, you know, all that, the big, huge set pieces, and it just still being the #1 show is a great thing. But let's get into what I've kind of been bearing the lead on here, right? And that's this. Just look at that. When that scene came up, you know, and you know, there have been rumors that have come out over the last couple of days that we were going to get this version of Vision, and it seemed kind of unbelievable to a degree, because it's just like, are they really going to do it? And they did. They did it. We got to see what actually happened. He said, the director said in that time, they've taken apart and putting the Vision back together, and we've not been able to get him going. And then we see that drone that still had some of Wanda's magic on it, and that's what they've used to bring Vision, this version of Vision, back online. Now, this has now made the director of S.W.O.R.D. the unequivocal, the unquestioned bad guy in this story. And the reason why I say that is because of this. Before, when we had, it was a kind of a way that you could say, you know, maybe he's not a bad guy, because everything he said to a degree was true. Now we know that he's been lying, at least about this. He's been hiding this. Now, this Vision's original body still being around brings about a couple of questions. A, we knew that Darcy said that the director was tracking decaying vibranium, and that's how they were able to track Vision moving around within the Hex. So now that we know that the Vision that's in the Hex was 100% created by Wanda within this reality that she created and of her own energy, brings about a couple of questions. Is that why Vision can't leave the Hex? is it a relation and distance from Wanda type of thing? Because we've still seen the things that she's been able to kind of craft and change the structure of have been able to exist outside the Hex. Look at Monica's clothes. Look at even the vehicle that Monica tried to drive in when it was made it halfway through the Hex. When it came back out, it still had the form of a truck that it was changing into. So we've seen that things that have been kind of changed into one thing, change from one thing into another inside the Hex, be able to survive and stay in that form outside the Hex. But now that we know that that Vision is 100% created from Wanda's energy, is it an out of sync thing? Is him being out of sync with Wanda meaning that he can't exist without her? It's a lot of questions to be made from this. But we now know we're going to get a huge fight scene at the end of this, and it may be Vision versus Vision. It may be maybe Agatha is dealt away with very early on in the episode, and kind of after the fallout from that, then we get this version, the White Vision come in and disrupt things, and then it immediately goes into another fight scene, maybe with Vision and Wanda and the twins all fighting Vision. It's a lot of questions to be made, but this happening, us getting this scene, really, it changes, right? So, is that this show has been so unique, right? And a lot of the expectation or the thought is that this show is going to end up with Wanda in a very, very bad place. And I do believe that, right? I do think that this show is going to end and is going to be a very sad ending, but I don't think it's going to be for the reasons that a lot of people do. I do think that at this point now, a lot of at this point, the way that I see this show ending, and this is 100% speculations. If you want to label this a spoiler, I have no fucking insider knowledge, if you guys can't tell by the setup of this stream. But the way that I see this going, and I said this before on my last speculation video, is I don't see this going with Vision and the kids both being gone and that kind of sending Wanda down a dark path. I really see this going in a way that maybe the version of Vision that was created in the Hex and Vision's original body somehow merge, and that brings, him out of the control of Sword, and we get maybe an amalgamation of the Vision that we've had in this Hex and the original Vision. We don't know. But I see this going a couple of ways, right? So the first way that this could go is that upon this, the White Vision, the repurposed Vision going into the Hex, if he's able to go into the Hex, is that he notices Wanda. At some point in that battle, before this show finishes, this version of Vision, the original body of Vision, notices Wanda. Maybe it helps him snap out. Maybe it makes him weak. Maybe that's what opens him up to his final defeat. But I really do think this show ends in the place that Wanda. I think this show ends with Wanda either being trapped in somewhere, Wanda either dying or something like that happening. I don't think this ends with Vision and the kids not being around anymore. I think that this ends with Wanda either being taken over, dying, or something like that, and Vision, in seeing what's happened to Wanda, him and the kids go off and they go into hiding or something like that, and they go off to live their days that way. And the reason why I think that is that we've already seen Wanda grieve. Like, this whole show is based off grief. This whole show is based on, her seeing Vision die twice. To have him die a third time, I think would just be overkill at that point, especially if you add the kids in. What if it's her atonement for the things that she's done to the people in Hex is that she creates a way in which her kids and her husband can go on, but she can't. She can't. So whether that's getting trapped in a multiverse, a different dimension, getting trapped in some type of spell by Agatha, Doctor Strange coming in, and the first act or the first couple of scenes is him getting her out of that, and then we dive into the multiverse of madness or whatever's going to happen there. Maybe that's some of what we get, but I don't think personally, I just don't see this show ending with Vision dying again. I could be 100% wrong. Let's just make this clear. I'm not saying that from any point of authority or saying that this is the way that it has to go. Not saying that at all. At this point, I think the thing that this show has proven is that all and any theories could be correct. But we do know we're going to get the white version of Vision, Vision's original body, and some type of confrontation there. How that confrontation ends, that remains to be seen. But to get back into, we've talked about that. That just bothered me. I had to talk about that version of Vision popping up. I had to. So sue me. I apologize. I had to. And by the way, if you're watching live, let me know in the chat. If you're watching after and watching the replay still, let me know you guys' theories after seeing this. But we finally get at the end of all of this, right? Once we see how the Hex was formed, and, you know, over the course of the show, we've talked about how many different, or Agatha has said how many different spells Wanda had to be in control of and cast at one time. And we end this episode before the mid-credit scene, which we already talked about, but we end it with Agatha outside with the kids, having them restrained by magic. And for the people who think that the twins may not be real, there were a lot of seeds planted to where that speculation may be correct as well. And the reason why I say that is because if you look at like the way that Agatha, every time that the kids come up, she would say stuff like, "Oh, your kids. Oh yeah, your children." And to really make it seem like it's they're not really her children, they're not really her kids, they may not be real. And, you know, we get that, you know, how when she took the cicada and she made the cicada a bird and everything. So like, did Wanda take somebody else's kids and kind of form them into hers? There's a lot of dark places that can go. But we get that ending with her there, and we see Agatha powered up, and she says that Wanda is using chaos magic. And that's something that, you know, if you have read the comics, you kind of expected that or already knew that, but we finally got that labeled. She's using chaos magic. And when you look at like how her magic has been depicted and what she has being depicted, it's very, very much so a very chaotic structure in which that her magic has been used and displayed in this show thus far. So it being chaos magic actually makes a lot of sense to what is going on for anyone who doesn't just watch the comics, because we know people, the MCU is way broader than people who just read the comics at this point. But with that being said, now that has been labeled, and she also calls her a Scarlet Witch, we've now labeled everything going on with Wanda. And we set the stage for what could be a great finale and what I expect to be a great finale. I think this finale is not going to go the way a lot of us think. But as the show has thrown us, I know the thing with Agatha was called very early on. But if you really look, a lot of the other theories, the speculation, everything is really all been wrong, or at least not the exact way that we expected it to go. And I think that that's going to continue in this show. I don't think that it, like, as cookie cutter as this looks like it may end, as far as like, we got a bad guy for Vision to fight, we got a bad woman for Wanda to fight, this show has subverted expectations so much that I wouldn't expect that. We still have Monica there. How's she going to play into the finale? We know she's also going off to Captain Marvel 2. We still have the fake Pietro there, which, you know, what we now know that that's not Pietro. But he's displayed powers while in the Hex. So like, what all happens in this finale? The potential here is huge for it to just really be something we're not expecting. And since we know that what happens in this show, like the way that Doctor Strange 2 is being crafted, the Multiverse of Madness, is you don't have had to watch this show to understand what's going on there. They're starting from a place where you don't need this show as the backdrop to it. So what else? How can this end? Like I said, I really just don't see it ending in the way that everyone's expecting. I don't even see it, as much as I have speculation on how it ends, and I think it's going to end with Vision and the twins going off and Wanda being either dead, trapped, or whatever it is. That none of that could happen. That's just complete of where my mind's going at this, because I just don't expect it to end the way that a lot of people do. But overall, We got a lot of, we don't know where Vision and Darcy are at this point. The fact that they haven't made it back yet is crazy. We know that Monica was left getting caught by Quicksilver with the Snoopers gonna snoop line. There's a lot that we don't know heading into this. The stage has been set, but nothing is quite certain. Everything is clear, but not clear at the same time. And for the show, and I had a conversation with my boy Fame Black. Make sure you check him out. It's Fame Black, so you can find him easily. I had a conversation with him, and he is one of the people who are disappointed by this show, and he's disappointed because to him the premise of this show was, why is Vision alive? How is Vision alive? And I never took that as the premise of this show. I took the premise and the basis of the show being is what's going on in this world. How did we get here? Not necessarily the question. The questions with Vision being alive or dead, I think at this point have either been answered. Well, now it's definitely been answered. But even before this episode, we kind of understood what was going on with Vision. Is that he was a product of the Hex in one way or another, whether it was pieces of his body being brought into the Hex and reformed there, whether it was him being 100% creation by the Hex. We knew that the Hex was behind why Vision was alive. More so, I think, this show, is this the show without a premise? Who knows? But this is just such a great show. And it's so different from the MCU. And I love the fact that what they're doing with this show is what they didn't do with, or what the Marvel is doing with these shows in general, these MCU based shows, that we basically know we're getting the finale of this. Very shortly after, we're getting Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Very shortly after that, we're getting the Loki series. It's all back to back. Back when Netflix had their version of the Netflix Marvel Universe, or whatever we're going to call it, it was a whole year between those original 4 shows coming out between each one. And so now that we're getting these back to back to back, at least for these first 3. It just ensures that we're going to be engulfed and engaged in MCU content. Especially while we're waiting to see what's happening with the release date of films and what's coming there. But Marvel's done a great job. And that's kind of it. I may do another follow-up video after I have some more time. This is literally my thoughts, my speculations, basically right after I finish the episode today. What's going on with the children? And that's another thing, right? Is that we know, like, there's no way that a robot can impregnate a woman. So we know that it's magic being involved with Wanda being pregnant one way or another. We saw Agatha planting the seeds for children, and there was some talk there of like her overall goal was to get Wanda to create children, and she wants the children. Doesn't seem like that's it anymore. That speculation is kind of gone by the wayside. At this point now, we kind of know Agatha's motivations are strictly based off how Wanda's doing it. Does she want to learn to do it herself? Does she want to kill Wanda or take Wanda out because she sees Wanda's too powerful? It's a lot of stuff going on there, but that remains to be seen. That's really it on my thoughts on WandaVision. Let me know how you guys feel. Like I said, whether you're watching live, whether you're watching the replay, just let me know what you think about this show. What do you think we're going with the finale? Do you think these two versions of Vision actually form into one? Let me just go back to this image one last time before we go. That is just cool as shit, right? That's just fucking cool. That just looks just wow. Wow. It's going to be interesting couple of episodes, man. Finale, I guess it's just one episode, but I think it's going to be a super long episode, but that's just fucking cool. But let me know what you guys think. Like I said, as we try to improve the live stream, this is something that we're going to keep making better and better, but man, that just looks awesome. All right, let me know what you guys think. Make sure you're following us at The Film Bros on Twitter. You can check out our podcast, The Film Frequency Podcast. We have a review coming up shortly where we're going to be talking about a Netflix documentary. So make sure you check out the podcast as well. And just support if you want to join our Facebook discussion group where the conversation is going about film and TV at all times. Just search The Film Frequency on Facebook. Thank you for checking out this live stream. I'm going to go to bed. I'm going to get